Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name's Charlotte and this channel is all about mental health and lifestyle and stuff like that. So if you want to stick around, don't forget to subscribe down below because it really helps me out as well, and then you won't miss out on a video or forget a video. Anyway, so today we will be talking about my BPD journey and my BPD story. It's something that's really hard to talk about. It's something that I've not properly sat down and thought about it for a long time. So this video will be a bit brief, but I'll go into as much detail as I can. And if you want to know more about the symptoms of BPD, if you want to know more about living with BPD, let me know, like this video or comment below, and I can make another video in depth about that. So yeah, this is my BPD story. I want to say really quick, if my voice keeps going in and out, I'm really sorry, I'm ill. I'm trying my hardest to just like power through and get this video out because I know a lot of people want to see it. It's so hard to remember my teenage years. It's really hard. I don't know if it's because a lot of it is I was really bad as a teenager. I was so naughty. I was so bad to people. I was so rude to people. I think it's just how I was dealing at the time. I think I was going through so much stuff that I didn't know I had a mental health condition at the time. I knew I had depression, but I didn't know that all these symptoms were actually a mental health condition. And when I finally got diagnosed, it all added up. So yeah, so a lot of it, I've blocked a lot of my childhood out. Might be trauma, might not be. And yeah, so I'll try my hardest to cover as much as I can. I've made this video to educate people on BPD and to educate people on how I got a diagnosis. I know a lot of people struggle with getting a diagnosis. I know a lot of people think they've got BPD or believe they have or think that someone else has. And I thought if I went through my story of my early symptoms and how I first got under a mental health team, it might help someone else. So growing up, I knew there was something not quite right. And I think everyone knew there was something quite not right, but it was like pinpointing it. I was really angry as a child. I was really upset a lot as a child. I couldn't deal well with my emotions when I was a child. I think my symptoms would have started probably about 10, if not earlier. Yeah, they started as just like, I would say, over the top emotions. So I think BPD makes you a bit more, makes emotions a bit more intense. And yeah, as a child, obviously I didn't know what was wrong. It was really hard to pinpoint what it was or to express to anyone what it was. So it took me ages to get diagnosed or to even see a psychiatrist. When I was younger, my mum and dad broke up and a lot of my mental health was blamed on that. That sounds awful. Because I had mental health condition, a lot of the time when my mum saw I was struggling, when family members saw I was struggling, they blamed it on my mum and dad breaking up, which is fair enough. It probably contributed, but equally, if you don't have BPD and you experience your mum and dad breaking up from a young age, I could understand how you could need a counsellor and how that could be really hard to process. But little did I know it was actually my mental health condition forming. A lot of my symptoms got passed, a lot of my symptoms got dismissed because I had so much going on in my life as well. I remember a lot of teachers in school saying that I was like the naughty child when I was younger. I think it was just how my BPD presented and how it started. I didn't know how I was feeling, I didn't know how to cope with it, I didn't know what was going on. So when I was about 11, I started seeing a counsellor and she was lovely. She picked up on signs that I was struggling and she wanted to help me, and I understand why. She gave me such a safe place to talk about my emotions. Originally I went because my mum and dad split up and my mum wanted me to speak to someone about it, which is fair enough. But then I started speaking to her about everything else and all these depression symptoms I had and my anxiety, and I think it's like attachment issues, I would say. Even from a young age, I've always been scared of people leaving. So I spoke to her about it and she gave me a safe space and it was amazing. And then she kind of pushed it a bit further and she suggested CAMS. And CAMS is a mental health team, a young person mental health team, and I, at the time, freaked. I thought, I knew there was something wrong with me. I didn't want anyone to be disappointed with me. I didn't want anyone to be upset with me, and my family already had so much going on, so I thought I'm not doing it. So I made an excuse not to go again to counselling, and I never did. Looking back, maybe I should have. Yeah, I was really scared of upsetting people if I had a mental health condition from a young age. I was scared of people leaving, and that's always been a big fear, and that is a big symptom of BPD, is a fear of abandonment. So I just wanted to keep everyone happy, and looking back it's really sad. So I think my depression started about that age then. I had depression before, but I think it was like a constant for so many years after this. I really struggled with it. I started having anxiety attacks. I started self-harming quite dramatically. I started having thoughts of ending my life from such a young age. Yeah, it was hard. At the age of 14, 15, I remember comparing myself to other people and not feeling good enough and being so depressed and anxious that I actually wanted to cut bits of my body off to look like other people. I struggled so badly with self-image, and that was the start of things getting even worse. When I don't know what convinced me, I don't know what changed things, but I remember going to my GP when I was about, I must have been about 15. And I went in and sat down with him. I saw a doctor that I'd never seen before. And I sat down with him and said, I'm not coping. I want to end my life. And I started crying in front of this doctor that I'd never seen before. And yeah, that was a big wake-up call for myself. And I think it was for my family members as well. At the time I went with my grandma, and she sat outside and she saw how upset I was when I came out. And I think that's when everyone started realising that I had something underlying. My GP wanted to see me every week because I was not willing to work within a mental health team. I don't know why. So I had to go in every week to see my GP so that he could check how I was, so he could talk about how things were. And I think he was questioning hospital, but I managed to get myself out of it. When I was 16, I think it was my 16th birthday or the day after or the day before, I can't remember. But around my 16th birthday, that's when I first went on antidepressants. I was near 16 anyway when I first went. I must have been. And he said that he was going to wait till I was 16 to give me antidepressants, and then that's when I first started. I got to the point where I was on this medication and it wasn't working, and I was convinced that nothing would work for me. I told my GP that I was fine, I was happy, I was content. And then I said that I didn't need to see him anymore. I felt like I was wasting his time. I felt like nothing was going to help me. I thought I'll just deal with it by myself, which was the worst thing to do. But I bottled up so much for years. And then I went to college, and college made my mental health so much worse. I was drinking, I was seeing people, I ended up cheating on my girlfriend at the time with someone else, which I'm not proud to admit. It was just a whirlwind of crap, to be honest. I didn't treat my mental health well. I wasn't looking after myself, I wasn't sleeping, I was drinking too much. It was just not a good time. I wasn't under a mental health team, I wasn't seeing a GP for anything, and my mental health just deteriorated and deteriorated. So at the age of, I think I was about 18, things got really, really bad. I coped till I was 18, and then I had the biggest breakdown. I think it's the second biggest breakdown I've ever had now. I got really depressed. I felt like I wasn't here, like I was just alive. I had all these horrible thoughts, all these horrible feelings. Things were really hard, and I didn't feel with it. Like I didn't feel like I had any energy. I didn't want to move, I didn't want to talk to anyone, I didn't care what happened to me. I just didn't want to live anymore. And that is when my boyfriend at the time took me to my GP, my doctors, and we sat down and I told him everything. Well, my boyfriend at the time told him everything because I didn't want to talk to him. And he saw how bad I was, and he got in touch with the crisis team. So the crisis team is a team that work in the mental health department, I'd say. And they try the hardest to avoid hospital admission. So they work with you at home, they come and see you twice a day on how many times you need it a day to try and help you from going into hospital. So at the time I had several people come over. It was so annoying because you didn't know who was coming, so people would just turn up at your door and you wouldn't know them, and it wasn't the same person, and it was twice a day to make sure I took my medication, to make sure I was eating, to make sure I was stable-ish, like I wasn't actively suicidal, gotta do it right now. But it was really hard to talk about how I felt because it was not the same person. So they were like, what were you like yesterday? And then you had to explain everything like you were like yesterday and how you are today, and what kind of person you were. It was just hard. I then went under a mental health team called the early intervention team, and they worked along the crisis team for a while. They had to do me an assessment and then assign someone to me, which was amazing compared to the crisis team, because I had this one mental health nurse who came around every day, twice a day, whenever I needed it, to check I was okay. I saw a psychiatrist every few months. I seemed to be on the right medication at the time. Things started to settle down, and I think it was the amount of support that I had around it, and admitting that I had a mental health condition, admitting that I wasn't okay, and dealing around that, I guess. Things kind of got stable, and I'm really shocked that I didn't have to go into hospital. They tried a few times to get me in, but there was no beds, or it was just, I was convinced that I didn't need to go in, or etc. I managed to get myself out of it. After this, I broke up with my boyfriend at the time. I moved back home, so I moved in with my grandma. I had the same team, different area, coming round. I was assigned this amazing nurse who would come round. I think it was like 3 times a week at that point, because I was a bit okay. Yeah, and then I also had like a social worker who would come round, and she helped me go outside, because at the time I was struggling with symptoms of agoraphobia. So that is like fear of going outside. I was terrified of leaving the house. I was terrified of not being able to get back home. I was terrified of my panic attacks, so I didn't want to go out. So they helped me with that, and that things got a little bit better from there. So yeah, fast forward a bit, and at the age of 24, I had been under the early intervention team for so many years, and they only deal with you for so many years, so I had to move on to a different mental health team. The early intervention team wouldn't work with diagnosis, so they wouldn't diagnose me, they wouldn't suggest what they think it is, they just dealt with the symptoms. And I think that was the worst bit, because a lot of my symptoms you wouldn't think is a mental health condition unless if you are experienced or have knowledge in mental health. So a lot of stuff I was doing, and the way I was acting, and the way my head was thinking, I just thought I was a horrible person. I had a big relapse, basically. Things got dark, things got hard to deal with. I went under the crisis team again, and the same team. I had people come around all the time, and I remember lying on my bed. I can't remember a lot of it. I think you kind of block a lot out because you don't want to remember it. But I remember my girlfriend, who's my girlfriend now, she had to hide a lot of sharp things in the car. We had to have my medication not in the house. We had to have, it was like a lot of precautions that my girlfriend had to take to make sure that I didn't go into hospital, which, looking back, I feel awful for. Like, yeah, I think my girlfriend has kept me out of hospital, and I think if I would have gone in, I don't think it would have been the place for recovery. I don't think I'd be where I am now. So I'm very thankful for her and the mental health team, and yeah. So because I was in the red zone of the mental health team, it means that I had to have visits on weekends because they didn't want me to go 2 days without a visit. And at the time I met this amazing person from the mental health team who came and sat down and spoke with me. She didn't come because she thought I had BPD or anything like that. It was just she was on duty and she came to check on me and to see how I was doing. And I didn't know this at the time, but I got told after that as soon as she saw me and as soon as I was talking, she knew that I had BPD, and it was very obvious for her because she works in personality disorder department and she could tell that I had it. So nothing was said at the time. I carried on as normal, and then I was so annoyed for not having a diagnosis. I had gone nearly 10 years struggling with this condition. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why I was thinking like I was. I didn't know how to control how I was thinking. The medication wasn't working. CBT wasn't working. Mindfulness wasn't working. So I went into my psychiatrist appointment practically kicking and screaming. I went in with my girlfriend and we sat down and I said, I need a diagnosis and I need you to tell me what you think it is so I can feel okay, or I want you to diagnose me, or I want you to just help me. Like, me coming in and telling you that I'm depressed every month isn't fixing this. Like, I need to know what's going on and I need a different plan. And luckily enough, the woman who came around to visit me at the weekend had already told my psychiatrist that she thinks it's borderline personality disorder. And thankfully, she gave me the diagnosis there and then. And at the time, I was like, I was over the moon that I'd finally got a diagnosis, because that means I could go home, I could research it, I could find other people that had the diagnosis and that were doing life like I wanted to do. But it was really hard to deal with the diagnosis, especially one that has got quite a lot of stigma attached to it. It was really hard to get my head around it. It was hard to admit that I had a diagnosis, even though it's what I wanted. It hits differently when you have to go home and sit with it after 10 years of fighting for a diagnosis. I have got a video on how to accept a diagnosis, so I will put the link below, and if you have just been diagnosed or know someone that has, maybe that can help. All my tips and stuff are on there as well. So yeah, that's literally very fast, very confusing, but that's how I got diagnosed. It took 10 years of wrong medication, wrong treatment, wrong nurses, wrong everything to get where I am today. I'm just really thankful that I've got a diagnosis. I eventually did like a short course on DBT. I started doing halfway through it and then I thought, I don't need this. Like, it wasn't relevant at the time. I managed to get myself, with the help of my partner, family members, mental health team, I managed to get myself to a point where I didn't actually need any sort of therapy, which I did most of it. But it was making me feel worse because I was in such a good place. I didn't want to get brought down by it because it was a group. So yeah, and currently now, I'm not on medication. I'm not under a mental health team. And I just see a psychiatrist once every so often to check up on how I am. And I really hope this lasts. And if you are trying to get a diagnosis, or if you have just been diagnosed, or if you believe that you have a mental health condition, my advice is to just keep going, because it took me 10 years for someone to come and see me and say, it is obvious that you've got this. And then 10 years, I honestly nearly gave up. Okay, I nearly gave up trying to get diagnosed. I nearly gave up on my life. I nearly gave up with everything. It's really hard to, I keep saying really hard. It's hard to understand how you are feeling without someone telling you that it is part of a condition. And that might not make sense to a lot of people, and it might make sense to a lot of people. So I really hope this helped you out. It's really quick, really kind of brief, because I have had so much. I've had like over 10 years of a mental health journey, even more. So I've run over it, the key points, the worst bits: contact with teams, contact with psychiatrists. If you want me to do a more in-depth video, let me know. If you want me to do a more depth in video about what the crisis team is, or any sort of mental health team, or what it's like talking to your GP, let me know. And yeah, if you've just been diagnosed, don't forget the other video. And if you enjoyed this video, please can you give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below. I sound like a professional. Wow. Okay, thank you.